Hello and welcome to the Climate Conversation, brought to you by Newsweek, High Impact, and London Climate Action Week. As COP30 in Belém approaches in just a few short months, the presidency is encouraging a new era of collective action. It's called Mutirão in Brazil. I'm very pleased to be joined by Ana Toni, who is the CEO of COP30. Did I pronounce it right, Anna?
You,
Sort of.
no, you did a brilliant job.
Thank you very much. Mutirão, it's a wonderful concept. Perhaps just tell us what it is and how you hope to apply it.
So mutirão is a word from indigenous language in Brazil, and we use quite a lot, which means collective action with empathy and solidarity for a common goal. So when everybody comes together to do something that benefits everyone and everybody collaborates to it. So this spirit of mutirão is to give us the sense of togetherness. We can only fight climate change if everybody can come in and do as much as everybody can, doing that action every day.
So it reminds me of when Fiji had the presidency some years ago. They instituted the Tanaloa Dialogue, I think another form of collaboration or to sort of create a collective spirit.
Yeah, and you can see that collective spirit is so important for climate change because climate change don't have borders, don't need visas for the impacts that we're having. So it's one topic that we need to solve together. And it's very hard. Let us see is 198 countries that needs to agree on how to do that. So it's very challenging, but is the only way forward, is together.
When we met, we did an interview in New York last September. You hadn't yet been appointed as CEO, and COP30 obviously was a little further out than now. And I remember very strikingly how you were full of dynamism and optimism. I'm not saying you're not full of that now, but I've seen you quoted more recently as saying, there are challenges. I mean, particularly geopolitically.
I mean, we need to be realistic where the geopolitics is at the moment, and the geopolitics definitely not helping. We have several military wars, unfortunately. We have trade wars happening. But in the end of the day, I mean, I am optimistic because if you see in 10 years' time, when we agreed on the Paris Agreement, how much has happened since then? We take it for granted, all the energy revolution that's happening in India, Brazil, China, here in the UK. How many years ago would UK dream that you phase out of coal? And now
Now it's happened.
This is a reality in terms of the forest and nature related topics. There's so much debate in Brazil. Deforestation is going down. So things are happening. Yes, I am optimistic, but the geopolitics does not help us to go faster. And we need to go faster because the challenge is to get as close as possible to 1.5 degrees.
Now, you've just come from the talks in Bonn that are sort of the precursor to COP30. And what's your assessment of how those are going?
Is going better than other years for my surprise, but nevertheless, I mean, when I compare the spirit that I'm feeling here in these last 3 days of the London Climate Week, 700 events, a lot of debates about specific projects, about specific economic instruments. So you feel like real life is moving. And then when we come to Bonn, there is a lot of debates about that word or that word, but that is climate negotiation has always been that way. But we did close the Paris Agreement in terms of the entire legal states of the Paris Agreement in the last 10 years. So I'm very confident that negotiators see that the world is in a hurry. There is a climate crisis, and we need to bring that sense of urgency, not only for the people, the investors, the private sector, local communities, but also to negotiators.
We're obviously thrilled that you are here in London, but what does London Climate Action Week bring to the process leading you to Belém and COP30?
COPs are no longer just the 2 weeks that will happen in Brazil, in Belém, from the 10th of November to the 22nd. It's no longer those 2 weeks. COPs are processes, a continuous debate. And I feel that the London Climate Week is part of COP30. So I feel very much that this is the spirit of Multirão is here. So I see this continuous. And I'm really, really happy that the London Climate Week is happening just before COP. We'll have also New York Climate Week. We'll have the meeting, the Climate Week in Africa. We'll have the pre-COP, the local leaders meetings. All those meetings for me are pre-COPs and will help us very much to achieve the goals that we need to achieve at COP30 and beyond. And beyond. The world will not finish at COP30. It's just a very important moment, but it's a moment among many others.
That's so interesting to frame it that way. And you're quoted as saying that a COP itself isn't a silver bullet.
Absolutely. COPs are not silver bullets. I know there is a lot of temptation from all of us to imagine that any one meeting will solve all our problems. Unfortunately, this is not the case. But I think COP30 can help us first to bring a sense of, as we were talking about, togetherness. We are really divided with so many of those wars at the moment. So if we are able at COP30 to reinforce the sense of multilateralism and togetherness and help everybody to be part of the fight against climate change, I think we'll have achieved a lot.
A question that I know has come up, and I'm afraid will keep coming up in the run-up to Belém, is that Brazil is an oil producer. It's also hosted this great climate event, and the government has plans to expand oil production.
Sure.
And I've heard you give a very robust defense of that, saying you're an emerging economy, effectively you need economic growth. This is a way to do it, and that it is still part of the transition. I wonder if you could help explain that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not defending or condemning. I don't think on the energy debate that we're having, there's a lot of finger pointing, be it for producer countries or companies, but we rarely look also as consumers. And you, myself, now many of us or all of us are also consumers of fossil fuel. Change is very, very difficult. I'm very happy that the investment on renewables have increased now more than fossil.
And the figures are amazing, aren't
And
they?
the figures is amazing. So the transition is happening. But unfortunately, the demand for energy is also growing. And that's a reality. And we need to ask ourselves, as producers, as consumers, why is we are continued being dependent on fossil fuel. It was just now in Canada, President Lula did talk about that, and he reminded all of us that the G7 was created in 1975 because of the energy crisis of the 1970s. So we can see that since then, we are having energy crisis. We have a chance now of putting this debate at the center of not only COP30, at the center of the discussions that we have. How long more can we continue to be dependent on the energy crisis of the fossil fuel? We have now renewables. Let us speed up the increase of renewables in our life. Let us become less dependent on fossil fuel, but let us also be realistic on who can go first. You, yourself, myself, which countries can go first, so that we can move forward. It's not anymore a question of if, it's a question of the how.
So there was that immense battle at COP28 over the language around fossil fuels, with the achievement of the phrase fossil fuels getting into the text for the first time. Does Brazil have an ambition around that subject, about what language you might want to end up with?
I mean, it's not only Brazil has an ambition. I think the whole world has that ambition. We agreed on the Globe Stock Take in the famous, I said I wasn't going to talk about the climate jargons about it, but yes, it was the paragraph 28 that gave us a direction on how to deal with the energy crisis. It talked about tripling renewable energy, doubling energy efficiency, transitioning away from fossil fuel in an orderly, just, and equitable manner. So this is the challenge. We agreed on that. 188 countries agreed on that. Now is a question of answer. What is the first, second, or third steps towards implementing the goal we set? So yes, we have a big ambition that we'll be able to create a space to speak about those issues in a safe way, rather than just finger pointing one or the other. We need to get producer countries, consumer countries, the producers of alternatives, renewable energy, the people from the financial sectors, to see how together we can come up with solutions for that big transition that we need to do.
You mentioned implementation, and I've seen you and others quoted as saying you want the COP to be less about flashy initiatives, sort of new ventures, because there are so many. There are plenty on the table already of things agreed but not implemented.
Yeah.
And you really want to knuckle down and get things actually moving.
Yeah, I mean, 10 years of the Paris Agreement, we have closed this so-called rule book, which is the laws related to the Paris Agreement. Now is a time to accelerate action. A lot has happened in the last 10 years, but we need to accelerate action. And there are many things that I think we can do at COP30. For example, really debating much more adaptation. Adaptation is a topic that has always been like...
It's been the ugly duckling, hasn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we are in an era that we already achieved 1.5 degrees last year, not as an average, but that one
For a
year.
year, yeah.
And there are many people suffering from heat waves, from flooding, from fires. We need to talk seriously about adaptation. And I think COP30 will deliver. It's not a flashy issue, but will deliver that. We also need to talk much more about nature finance. Nature finance has been, again, a topic that has always been, when we talk about climate finance, we always think about energy, really important. But nature finance, standing forests, oceans, mangroves, we talk very little about how the financial sector, private sector can help on that preservation. We talk little about the role of cities, and I think in our COP we want to put cities also in a higher level. So there will be many, so to say, seen as smaller topics, but yes, we are getting into implementation. And when we talk about implementation, the topics, perhaps they are less flashy, but they are perhaps more important. And that's why we feel that this is what we need to deliver.
And particularly, I think this point of the sort of lived experience of climate change now. I remember my first visit to the Amazon rainforest was 20 years ago, and some scientists were warning that droughts might become more frequent. And everybody said, well, that can't happen. And then I don't know how many droughts you've had in the last 20 years, but they become more and more severe. It's a reality now, isn't it?
That's a reality. I mean, we always thought about climate change being a problem of the future. Climate change is a problem of now, is of the present. And I feel sometimes that people don't realize they are part of the transition already. So every time somebody decides which car he or she will buy, if it's a hybrid car, if it's a biofuel car, or if it's an electric car, they are making a choice. Do I want to be part of the solution, or do I want it to continue to be part of the problem? Every time you choose as a consumer, as a CEO, or as a voter, we are part of that change. And I think we need to empower people to realize they are part of that change, and in their everyday life, they are making choices that is part of that transition that we all want.
That gets us back to Muchi Rao, where
Yes.
I guess everybody's involved.
Everybody's
Ana,
involved.
thank you very, very much indeed. It's been fascinating, and best of luck in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us in the climate conversation. That's all for now.